What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us here today on the VSO Gun Channel. We're out here on the range today, and today we're going to talk about steel target selection. This was actually a video that was derived from several comments on some other videos, and at first I thought that this was a kind of one of those videos that would lie in personal preference realm, and I don't really do a whole lot of those. But then I started thinking about it a little bit, and yeah, there is a fair amount of information to digest here that we can make a video on. So first off, it's no secret here that we use shootsteel.com as our preferred target provider. My idea of what a steel target should be is exactly what they make, so we'll actually touch on some of those points here in a minute, but just know that they're our preferred vendor for steel targets. So selecting a steel target or steel targets is relatively easy and simultaneously rather complicated at the same time, and I'll expand on that. It's pretty easy to pick a steel target that is going to be all right for most of the things that you're going to shoot at it. It's much more complicated to pick one that performs optimally with the things that you want to shoot at it, and really what it comes down to is just like everything else, it's situation specific. I don't think that there is a single target design that demonstrates this concept more aptly than the pepper popper. So we get two pepper poppers set up right there. They're a little bit quartered away from us, so we might get a little bit of bounce here, but they're great because they give you instantaneous auditory feedback and visual feedback in that they fall down. Yeah, see, we got a little bit of bounce. These are great for pistols for short range work because we're located right here. All I have to do is, after the stage is done, walk back up and set them back up, and they're very tunable. You can set them so that if you chip them with a 22, they'll fall down, or you can run the other way and set them up so that if you hit them the wrong way with a 44 Magnum, they won't go down. You have to hit them in the specific spot to make sure that you're getting good, accurate hits. So there's a wide range of use for them. However, they're great for pistols, not for rifles, and the reason why is because we're up close right here. After we shoot the stage and just walk over there and set them right back up. But if they're out there at 200 yards, well, after I knock them down, I have to go walk 200 yards and set them back up. So that would not be a good situation they would not be most optimized for use on a longer range. Now, if we wanted the same effect, for instance, we have things called auto poppers. And we have two of those set up right here. And these would be great for your rifle stuff because they give you the same thing, auditory feedback, visual feedback, and then they lay down, but then they come right back up so that lazy people like me don't have to walk 200-300 yards downrange to set them back up. So by far my favorite, and what I would argue is the most versatile target, is the static style target, which is basically a plate that's been suspended on a rack that allows you to move it around the range. And again, very versatile, and that's probably why I like them so much. But there's lots of different shape sizes and all that sort of stuff around the industry. We'll get to how Shoot Steel does it here in a second, but there are really two types that we use, and those are round gongs and steel silhouettes. And they have different functions. Circles, or gongs if you will, are really great for testing one's accuracy. Human beings are really good at finding the center of things, especially geometric shapes. So they're really great for testing one's ability to shoot, and you can quickly calculate, basically, if you know how big the gong is, about how good you're doing. If your average AR-15 shoots 1.5 minutes and you're shooting a 3-inch group at 200 yards, you're doing pretty good for the capabilities of the rifle. So that would constitute, on something like that 12-inch gong right there, we need to be on the inner third of that gong. Steel silhouettes, by contrast, are really good for your longer range shooting because you get more vertical on the target. So if you don't know the exact range that you're shooting at, if you know that you're shooting at like 300-ish, but you're not exactly sure what that tens is, you know, somewhere between 300 and 350, for instance, then you've got some extra vertical to soak up that drop. It's a little bit more user-friendly in that regard. But the way that Shoot Steel does these things is they have a bolt through them, and it actually makes them quite loud. So as you can see, they make quite a bit of noise, and that's one of the reasons that we like them, especially for any range shooting, because it gives you that audible feedback. How you attach the gong to the stand matters. So we're in here close on this gong, and as you can see, this is supported by a single bolt here, and it's justified up to the top here so that the area that we're aiming at is not where the bolt is. But this is my preferred design, and the reason why is I get people don't like bolts, but what bolts do for you, a bolt through target, is eliminate any welds, and welds equal weakness. So anytime that you've got any weld on a target, that is a weak point. And the reason why is even on these targets where they've been cut out, you'll see chips come out of the perimeter when they've been shot with high velocity rounds, because that is where the temper has been screwed up. A weld, say if you had a bracket on the back of this, would weaken the steel along the weld line. I'll not name any names, but we were at an industry event once where there was a target that was rated for 50 BMG, and we bent it in half in a half hour with 7.62 by 39 because there was a big weld that ran the whole width of the target, and basically the whole target bent like this and then broke off the stand, and it was done. So now if you have a bolt like that, then the bolt face itself actually covers the weak part where the cut has been made in the target. And we're not saying that this is going to be like Play-Doh or anything like that, but that gives a little bit of cushion. When you break a bolt, you go to the hardware store and get another one. So also, I'd like to note that these are suspended via 2x4, and you'll notice that the wide side of the 2x4 is out. So a lot of designs out there you'll see have turned the 2x4 the wrong way. The idea in the mind is that the smaller target, you won't hit it, but if you think about the math here for a second, you do more structural damage by shooting the spine of the 2x4 than you do shooting the width of the 2x4. Now this also has some reinforcement on here, and that's twofold. One, if you get to banging this thing, that can start to crack your 2x4 over extended periods of time. And it also shields it from direct fire and spall that will damage the 2x4. So these extra, if you got a whole bunch of 2x4s laying around, you don't really need them. But we run through targets like crazy out here, so some of our high use targets, we've put these guards on. Similar target to the static target that we talked about is basically a variation, and Shoot Steel calls this their short range rifle target, and that's exactly what it is. You can see that it's got an extreme cant on it, whereas the static targets that we just looked at were pretty vertical. And ultimately what this does is allows you to shoot this thing super close, both for target longevity, because it depletes some of that horizontal energy towards the ground when the rifle hits it, but also for your safety in that it takes all the spall and directs it down and away from you. The downside of a target like this is that they don't make very much noise, and they're not really designed to. They're designed to grab that energy and dissipate it away from the shooter and away from the plate. They don't make a whole lot of noise. So this is not great for long range work. This is not something I would put out there at 500 yards. I would much rather have that really, really noisy static target that we just looked at. So this is just like 70 yards. This isn't any real yardage or anything, but this will give us a really good demonstration. I'm going to shoot a different variation of the short range rifle target there, and then shoot one of those statics up there, and you'll hear the difference. So here we go. Short range. Still sounds pretty good because we have a suppressed rifle here. Even the carry time of the ring, if you will, is different. And that has to do with the way that the target is constructed, but then also there's kind of a magical ratio, if you will. And what it is the size of the strike face, the surface area of the strike face, to the thickness of the target. I've been to a lot of different ranges where they'll maybe select a target that is thicker than it needs to be for the application. The target doesn't have to be an inch thick if it's out there at 800 yards. I don't care what you're shooting it with. But the thinner the target relative to the surface area, the width and the height of the target, the more it's going to ring. So you ideally, if you're shooting out at range, to get the best sound signature, you want the thinnest target that you can shoot for the size that you're shooting. Again, keeping in mind that it's rated for the caliber that you're shooting it at the range that you're shooting it. And that'll give you the best sound performance. And that's what's important when it comes to those hits out there at long range, especially if you're shooting by yourself with no spotter. Moving on to gongs, swinging gongs. Moving on to swinging gongs. As you can see, the problem with swinging gongs that you have to basically keep in mind is that their footprint is huge. Obviously, this is an extreme example. Now, the great thing about swinging gongs, though, is they take a lot of abuse. This target has been in this spot for years. And as you can see, there's been some really crappy shooting that's come through here, and that thing is still standing. It'll probably sit there for another year before, or more, before the rigid conduit that holds it up needs to be replaced. You can suspend those targets via a whole bunch of different means. We use chains here. They last the longest, in my opinion. I've seen everything from wire to rubber straps. But the real benefit of a swinging target like that is you can shoot them super close. Like, I didn't get anything on that from shooting it at that distance with a rifle. And then also there's some displacement of that target. So you can also get those cool effects, those visual effects from calling shots by yourself from range. If the gong's swinging, you hit it. If it's not swinging, you didn't hit it. So that's a plus there. The other thing that chains do is, and it's not really relevant for a target like this or that big one that we looked at, but for like a smaller one, for instance, a smaller gong like this guy right here, and for instance, a smaller gong like this, so for instance, a smaller gong like this guy right here. And basically that's a gong suspended by chain, and the chain adds extra hanging mass to the thing. We can shoot this thing with 5.56 all day long. It dissipates some of that energy, but the chain allows it to hang there a little bit longer so we can get a few more shots on it before it gets moving. And that's the real shortcoming of hanging gongs. They rattle around a whole lot, and they're not super great once you get them going for that rapid fire, like close range stuff. Oh, that's a really bad example though, because shooting 300 blackout. Plate racks are great for that fast shooting, smaller targets for accuracy type thing. Well, as you guys can probably hear, that purple cloud's gonna be here any second now, so we're gonna go and break it off here today. That's our synopsis for steel target selection. I hope that this information was helpful to anybody who's looking to potentially outfit a range with steel targets. The one thing that I will note is that there are recommendations on shootsteel.com's website for the various applications for the targets that they provide. So you can absolutely take their word for it. They're good people. And as always, thank you guys for joining us here today on the VSO Gun Channel, and hopefully we'll see you guys on a future video.